All right, Shabbos say good morning. Let us begin. So we are picking up in Os Mem Ches and Tzidkas Hatzaddik, new week, new Os. And here the Rebbe is introducing a really incredible idea. So actually, the Uriah Hasidus gives a good introduction to this particular Seif. So if you look on page, I sent it out on the WhatsApp chat last night, page Kuf Yud Dalid. Os Mem Ches, we are picking up in the Be'uriah Hasidus, the right-hand column. Ba'os hakodemes muvuar, sheyesh tzad tov b'chol koach ra, u'b'chol tchunas nefesh, u'mida shekayemes b'nefesh adam. So let's remember again, in Os Mem Zayin, so Reb Tzaddik was speaking about the powerful idea that in life, every single koach, every single strength, and every single midah, every single attribute has a positive and a negative possibility to it. That in life, rarely will you find things that are bad or good. Right, when it comes to the world of midos and kochos, character traits, ability, strengths, but rather everything is a question of how you channel it. So remember again, we saw something like chutzpah, which we normally saw as a terrible midah, yet ultimately, when used in a particular way, can be positive. We saw ka'as, which is a terribly destructive midah, yet anger, but yet again, when used in a constructive way to fulfill the Ratzon Hashem, could be positive and good. Conversely, we saw anova, humility, which we would normally extol as an incredible virtue, yet when misapplied, can become one's very undoing and the source of an avera. So Reb Tzaddik says how v'yeshba and l'shtamish and l'kedusha, and therefore, even what we normally think of in our minds as like the worst midos have the ability to be applied for some matter of holiness. As Reb Tzaddik says, to fulfill the Ratzon Hashem. So we'll say, so what comes out of Os Mem Zayin, says Reb Tzaddik, is this idea, and I think we touched on this yesterday. There's no such thing as a midah that you have to eradicate. There's no such thing, and this is very different because often in kind of like in our personalistic musar, we sometimes assume I have a negative midah, and my job in life is to go ahead and get rid of that midah. And Reb Tzaddik says, no, that's not really true because let's say getting rid of a midah means fundamentally altering something in your persona. Says Reb Tzaddik, that's not really a personalistic avod. I don't have to get rid of a midah. I have to rechannel that koach. I have to rechannel that strength. I have to rechannel that characteristic or that trait. So Reb Tzaddik says, so in the world of midos, in the world of kochos, you don't have to eradicate, you just have to rechannel. However, look what he says. Ach b'chol zos yesh lehizoher ma'od shelo yischaber adam im risha'im hapolim b'tzad harasha v'kocham. So we'll say, there's a difference between rechanneling your inner kochos and ultimately, again, taking things that are negative about yourself, drilling down to the root of them, and like I said, rechanneling that energy versus going ahead and making sure that you stay away from negative people. See what I say? What Tzaddik is saying is like this. You might have thought once we discover that in the world of midos and in the world of kochos, that there's nothing really bad. There's just misapplied midos, misapplied kochos, and everything is about retooling and rechanneling. Maybe they say something about people, right? Really, the truth is, there's no rishaim. There's no rishaim. There's just people who are misunderstood, and therefore, again, I can really have a relationship with everyone because at the end of the day, who's a rasha? A rasha is just a person who's misusing and misapplying her kochos or abilities. Says Reb Tzaddik, no. There's a difference between how you relate to yourself versus how you relate to others. When you relate to yourself, when I look in the mirror and I see negative things, I don't see that I'm a rasha. I see I'm a good person who does bad things. I'm a good person who has misappropriated certain midos and certain kochos and used those energies in a negative way. But there are people who are legitimately bad influences. Not just because they're bad influences doesn't have to mean that they're necessarily bad people. But Lamaisa, they're bad influences, not good influences for me. And therefore, says Reb Tzaddik, a person has to be especially vigilant. Shelo yischaber adam im risha'im, hapolim b'tzad harasha b'kocham. That if I know people who are not channeling their energies and their attributes in the right way, I have to distance myself from those individuals. Ve'in lischaber elehem afilu kedei lasos biachad imoim eze dvar mitzvah. Now, let's hear Hatzaddik says something very powerful. He says, and you should not even have a connection with these Rishoim, even to go ahead and perform a particular mitzvah. So what Hatzaddik is really highlighting over here is the power of our relationship connections, or the power of our personalistic connections. That it might be that I might go ahead and say, listen, I know this person is a Rasha, but together we could accomplish X. Tzaddik says a person has to be so careful about the relationships they forge with others. So we'll say this is actually a very profound statement. But Tzaddik says is like this. You think to yourself, well, 1 second, if I know that a person is a Rasha, however we're defining a Rasha, but Tzaddik says, I know a person is a Rasha, and I know it's not the right influence, but together we could accomplish something great. Tzaddik says there's a danger of trying to accomplish great things, even mitzvah things, with a person who's a Rasha. What's the danger? That somewhere over the course or somewhere over the initiative, I lose my way, and that which starts out as a pursuit for the good is easily corrupted, ultimately, again, the Ra, for something negative. So Tzaddik Rabbeinu here is highlighting the care and concern we have to take about who we connect ourselves to. Don't think that just because you could rechannel your own personalistic attributes and behaviors in a positive way, that they will allow you to go ahead and connect with others who are doing the wrong thing, and for their behaviors not to have an impact on you. So we'll see, you hear this distinction? So Hatzaddik is saying, when I look inside myself, so I'm not a bad person, even if I do bad things. I'm just a good person who is misappropriating my character traits and abilities, channeling them in the wrong direction. But you have to be careful about who you align yourself with. Because if you align yourself with the wrong people, if you forge relationships with the wrong people, if you allow yourself to be exposed to the wrong people, those relationships will bring you down. And even if those relationships are forged for noble purposes, says Reb Tzaddik, like the performance of mitzvahs, a person has to be understanding that there is no such thing as a relationship that does not leave an indelible mark on who and what we are. So Reb Tzaddik is going to give examples of this. It's actually quite incredible. Obviously also, this is important, meaning we all forge relationships with all kinds of people, right? I don't think there's one of us who has relations with this kind of person, right? I'm only friends with tzaddikim. That's my criteria for making friends. You're a tzaddik, we could be friends. You're not a tzaddik, we're not going to be friends. Most of us don't have relationships like that. Also, remember again, sometimes, certainly, we all know, you also can't choose your family members. So even if you could be selective with ultimately, again, who it is that you're forging friendships, sometimes just in a family, there are influences that are less than desirable. So we'll say, Reb Tzaddik is talking about over here whom I choose to form close connections with. He's not talking about, utilitarian relationships. He's not talking about relationships that I can't totally avoid. He's saying, who do I choose to go ahead and actively surround myself with? So he gives some examples of this, which are quite profound. The klal zeh kenu mefurish b'mechilta shalomed kimo shene'emar b'nevuah al Yoshafat melech. So we'll say Yoshafat, who was the melech of Yehuda. So the pasuk quotes it in Divrei Hayamim, "Behischabercha im achazyo paras Hashem es ma'asecha mikan amnu chachamim al yischaber adam l'rasha filu lekarva l'torah." So we'll say Reb Tzaddik uses as an example of this the strategic relationship between King Yehoshaphat and King Achazyo. Now, Achazyo was a big Rasha, and Yehoshaphat was a righteous individual. So Reb Tzaddik says, "Va'afa pi shenischaber Yehoshaphat imo Achazyo rak lekavana tova dahainu kidei lilchom yachad imo neged aram." There was something very interesting here. Why does Achazyo form a relationship? Why does Yehoshaphat form a relationship with Achazyo? We'll say it was a strategic relationship. They both had a common enemy. Malchus Yudah, Malchus Yisrael had a common enemy. The common enemy was Aram. was Aram. So neither one of them could take on Aram on their own. So Yehoshaphat reaches out to Achazio, let us form a strategic relationship and fight against our common enemy. Mikol makom, ne'enash al hischabrus zu. Nevertheless, amazingly enough, Yehoshaphat is punished for forging this relationship. So I will say, so this is also incredible, meaning obviously the more righteous you are, the more sensitive you are to these influences and the greater the level of accountability. In other words, that we have to forge strategic relationships all the time in life, and often we can't necessarily choose those partners with whom we forge those relationships. But here you see that the Tzaddik Yehoshaphat was held accountable for creating a strategic alliance, not a friendship, a strategic alliance with Achazio to fight against the common enemy. So the Tzaddik is saying, you see from now, what is he held accountable for? Did Yehoshaphat go off the derech? Did Yehoshaphat begin assimilating the behaviors and character traits of Achazio? No. But there's a din, I will say, that again, we are always influenced by whom we surround ourselves with. So even King Yehoshaphat is held accountable for that alliance with Achazio. V'gam yesh lavi raya mimashner Mishlei b'ni al tilech b'derech itam. Quotes the pasuk in Mishlei. Shlomo Melech writes, "My son, do not go on the path with them." Perish al tilech biyachad im hachatoim im archotim ha'ila afilu b'derech. V'hari b'chol makom shekasuv hamila derech b'sefer Mishlei. Ritzon Alomer al derech haTorah v'hamitzvos, ve'al zeh masir Shlomo HaMelech shelo yelech imohem afilu l'tzorech kiyum haTorah v'hamitzvos. So this is very interesting, I will say. So here, Chazal explained that whenever you find the word derech in Mishlei, derech in Mishlei always refers to the derech of Torah and mitzvos. So what is Shlomo Melech saying? Bini, my son, al telech b'derech itom. Do not walk on the path with them. In other words, that even if you think you're doing something, lahagdil Torah uladira, to enhance Torah, to bolster Torah, to amplify Torah, do not do it in collaboration with Rishoim, because ultimately, again, such an endeavor is not going to yield the proper fruit. So I will say, so you begin to see Reb Tzaddik highlighting an incredible concept, namely that halacha l'maisa, a person is influenced by whom they forge relationships with. And we speak about this often. Sometimes we think that we could kind of remain above our relationships. I know this person is negative. I know this person is spiritually toxic. I know this is not a good relationship for me, but it's not going to affect me. It's not going to impact me. And Reb Tzaddik says, not true. Not true. Not only is it not true, but even if the relationship is forged for noble purposes, for a good common cause, the derech of Torah and mitzvahs, Achazio and Yehoshaphat, to fight against the common enemy of Am Yisrael, ultimately, again, Reb Tzaddik says, there's more to be lost than to be gained. Because the impact that relationship with the quote-unquote Russia, the personalistic impact that is going to have on me, is going to undo any potential good that may come out of it. Now, I will say, we'll stop over here for today. We're going to have to speak about how this actually works, in life also, because I will say life, many times in life, we do have to collaborate with all kinds of people towards a common good. Meaning that's just the nature of the human condition. You can't operate in a vacuum. You often can't accomplish all the things you need to accomplish by yourself without some type of partnership, even with what I'll call it a quote-unquote Rishoim. So we'll have to see how to navigate that. But at least step one, as Reb Tzaddik is telling us, be sensitive to the impact every single relationship has on who and what you are. All right, we'll stop over here. We'll pick up in Memches tomorrow.